Okay, so we whilst we went here, we did take your we introduced you. So Mr. Akintunde Sawyerr is the MD of Nigerian Education Loan Fund. Just going to dive right into it. And your discussion area is to, helping us with the need to avoid rushing through school and the provision of funding intervention. So that's your area, sir. Okay, so my first question to you, sir, is why is it important to avoid rushing students through school, especially in their early years?
Okay, so I think, the answer is really in the question. I think rushing anything is, pretty dangerous, really, because it's open to all sorts of risks and not really giving consideration to the things around it. So when you say rushing children through school, I think that the big issue with it is that there are certain things or certain steps in the education process that require you to have reached a certain level of maturity so that the individual, the child, can actually absorb the knowledge that is being put in front of them and absorb it in a proper way. Because education is like having building blocks, one thing on top of the other, until you attain the level of knowledge that is required or adequate. And if you rush that process, then actually things get lost along the way. There are obviously good reasons why people do that, but generally it's not a good thing to do. Having said that, you do have, because we're all individuals and we all have different learning rates and different levels of functioning, there are obviously some risks with children who are perhaps very, very bright and not allowing them to attain their potential. So, you will see examples of children all of the same age in a class, and one of them or some of them are exceptionally bright. And if you don't push them to reach their potential, what tends to happen is that they become bored and uninterested, and they can actually regress. So in as much as we're saying that in general, we should allow children to grow and mature along with the learning that's being, or the teaching that's being given to them, we should also recognize that in certain cases, there are gifted children who perhaps need to be stretched a little bit more. But generally, I think that peer groups and having children of the same age within a class group is a good thing, because apart from the academic side of it, there's a sort of natural developmental experience that they get from being in class with children of a similar age.
Okay, thank you so much. One of the things that you just shared that jumped at me is, not having to create room where a gifted child is bored, right? So, which brings me to, really, there is something called differentiation. So if you have children who are, yes, they might be very bright, but there's a way the teacher can structure the learning experience such that the child's need is also catered to. All right. So I'll just quickly ask you the next question. So what kind of loan structures or grants could be developed to support students who choose to take gap years for maturity or skill development?
Okay, so I guess, gap years can be important in terms of allowing students to consolidate either on the knowledge they've already acquired, or to enable them to be able to explore and go out and get exposure in a non-classroom environment that allows them to be well prepared for, either returning into the learning level that they were at, or perhaps to be able to reconnect into the program that they were doing before. But in terms of financing structures, I think, it's important to recognize that everything gets more expensive, including education. So one of the reasons that people want to rush through their education and get to a point where, ultimately they start earning, one of the reasons they like to push that process is because they believe, and it's often the case, that education will get more expensive. If you take a year out, by the time you get back into the learning level that you ought to be at or that you need to be at next, costs have gone up. So I guess one of the ways in which this can be mitigated is if some sort of agreement is reached with the learning institution that fees for an individual who's taking time out, who's taking a gap year, will be frozen at the level that it was at before they left the institution. So that's one opportunity. And another is to ensure that funds are being saved up for the education when they go back, so that gap year isn't just one where the funds that may be available get wasted. And I guess that can be applied to insurance. It can be applied to loans. You can take loans up front. It can be applied using savings plans or savings policies. But yeah, it's like anything. If you take time out or you don't make a decision now against something that has a cost implication and you want to leave it for a year, the cost will go up. That's just inevitable. That's the way things work across the world.
Okay, thank you so much. This is really appreciated, and we'll definitely jump on the information that you have shared with us. And for the first part, really, is something that's both parents and teachers and school owners need to really pay attention to. So a child who is gifted should never be allowed to regress. That's a very, very key area. No child who is gifted should, be made to experience that regression in terms of, as a result of probably the quantum of work or the quality of, exercises given to that child in the classroom. Thank you so much, sir. Okay.
You're welcome. Can I make one other very quick point?
Okay.
Is there time for that? Is there time for that?
We'll take it. Okay, just give us one. Yes, quickly. Let's take it.
Okay, it's really just an example. So if you look at a course like medicine, so a child graduates and becomes a doctor, and if you rush that child through school, you can actually become a doctor at the age of 20, maybe 21, and you can be exceptionally bright and get distinctions all the way through. But look, what does a doctor do? Sometimes a doctor has to break bad news to an individual or to a family to say, hey, a person has HIV, or they have cancer, or they have any other terminal illness. You can't expect somebody who isn't mature enough to sit with a family and deliver news that's going to break the heart of the family, break the heart of the individual. Because, a child, or a young person that is not mature enough, even though they understand the technicality of the illness, you can't expect them to break that news with the sort of empathy that you would expect perhaps a 45-year-old doctor to break the news with. So I just wanted to add that sometimes it's not just about academic prowess or achievement. It's also about the maturity that is demanded of you if you're a judge or a doctor, because a judge might need to sentence someone to life imprisonment, to death, perhaps in certain countries. You have to be of a certain level of maturity to be able to deliver a judgment like that. So thank you. I just wanted to add that into the mix.
Thank you very much.